Hello, folks. How are you doing today? It is great to see you all. Welcome, welcome. We have so much to discuss. Now, I'm sure all of you have noticed that instead of doing my usual background of a city skyline, I decided to take a photograph of myself sitting in my favorite burger place in my lovely neighborhood in Brooklyn. I decided to do it that way. So we'll see. Do more people want to see a picture of me in a burger place? Is that going to attract more of you to come and join us for our lovely conversation? Or are more people attracted to a cityscape? Already I see a lot of you. Shout out to Felicity. Shout out to Kinky. Shout out to Martin. Shout out to Eve. Shout out to the Free Marxist. So many people joining us. Wow, it is an exciting time. We have so much on the agenda to speak about. Oh my goodness. The Inundation is with us. Sebastian is with us. Joe Howard is with us. Space Communist is with us. Lincolnite Yankee is with us. Wow. Thank you for checking in. I love doing this kind of roll call. Someone who calls themselves General is here. Itatis is with us. Wow, I'm just sitting here doing a roll call and I'm having a great time doing it. What a lovely day it is. So, Free Marxist says hello from the UK. Well, hello from the United States. I'm here in downtown Brooklyn, my lovely Brooklyn apartment. Whistleblower says hello. Stanley Stanlin says hey. Troy S. says he's looking forward to it. Kinky wants to know what's up with the MEK rally in D.C. Night by Night says, what am I, chopped liver? Well, I think that you're someone on my live, but, I mean, who do I... Danny Uko says hello. Donnie Wallace says hello. General says hello. Nathaniel Adams says hello. Wow, so much for us to talk about. Wow. Now, a lot of what people are asking me about is already on my agenda, but I'll add a few things. Someone asked me about Khrushchev. I'll put that on my list of things to talk about. Someone asked me about John Locke. I'll put that on my list of things to talk about. Hey, folks, if you haven't already done it, now is the time. Pasta Bazook says, Caleb. If you haven't already done it, Young Simba says, hey, Caleb, started reading some Marx and Lenin because of you. Glad to be an inspiration. But if you haven't already done it, now is the time to tweet this out, to share it, to make this a bigger conversation. Bring as many people here as we can. There is so much to discuss. We want this to be a bigger conversation. The more people that are with us, the better this goes. The more of a chat we have, the more interesting the comments are going to be. I see someone asking about my new book. We will discuss that, don't worry. I see Clarence Darrow asking about the April thesis. I see Sebastian Misinek asking about Dangism. Oh, wow, so many questions. So many questions. Now is the time, folks. Put this on your Twitter. Put this on your Facebook. Bring people into the conversation. We are just getting started. It is Saturday night. I am looking out my window. The sun has not even set yet here in Brooklyn. It's just after 8 o'clock, and there is so much we can talk about. Please bring this into the conversation. We have so much to discuss. Make this a bigger chat. Wow, so much happening in the world. So much that we can get into here on this live. So much to talk about. As I tweeted out earlier, I have got issues related to China to talk about. I've got issues related to Iran to talk about. I've got domestic U.S. issues and the U.S. economy to talk about. I've got issues related to the 2020 presidential campaign and the Democratic primary to talk about. I have so much to get into. And we are just getting started. Soul Conjecture says, hey, Roo, I don't know what that means. Lisa Hauserman says, we'll share now. Thank you, Lisa. You are a longtime friend. Adam says, I just joined. Did I miss much? No, you didn't. We're only 4 minutes in, but so much to talk about. What a day. What a day. All right? It's Saturday evening. I know we all had a stressful week, especially those of us who follow international affairs. So I'm going to calm myself down a little bit. I've had a lot of caffeine today, so there will be none of the diet soda that will not be named, just my nice metal water bottle full of water with ice in it. Folks, we are not there. And this is very important to remember. We are not there. the back room of the White House and the back rooms where the members of Congress talk amongst themselves, say what they really think, don't read from the script that they've been given, don't follow what is best for their careers and for their PR, but actually say what they think. We're not there. Right? We don't know what actually goes on in the back room. So we can only look at what is being said in mainstream media, what they have prepared for us. Right? We can only look at the approved version of events. We can only see the version of events that we are being presented. We can speculate about what's behind the scenes. We can notice patterns that take place. But we're not there. We don't know exactly what is really going on. But it appears, according to the official reports that we've gotten from the White House and from the words of Trump himself, we apparently, it looks like, again, we're not there, we don't know what actually happened, we know what we are being told. It appears that we very well could have been 10 minutes away from World War III. 10 minutes away from World War III this week. That's what it looks like, right? Iran shot down an unmanned U.S. drone. They say this drone violated their territorial integrity in the south of their country. They shot it down. The United States says this drone was only in international waters, never violated Iran's territorial integrity, never violated Iran's airspace. Regardless, this drone was shot down, and apparently Donald Trump was 10 minutes away from launching a U.S. military strike. A U.S. military strike against 3 locations inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. 10 minutes away from doing it. The clock was counting down. And according to what Donald Trump said, with 10 minutes away, he asked how many civilians would be killed. They said that roughly 150 people, I shouldn't say civilians, but 150 people would be killed. And then, according to what Trump said afterwards, they shot an unmanned drone, and here we are sitting with 150 dead people, and I didn't like it, so I called it off. Yeah, this is a big deal. Now, the UN Security Council meeting will take place on Monday. And at that meeting, Iran says it's going to bring proof that the U.S. drone was shot down in international waters. They say they have collected wreckage from international waters. They say that the United States, that claims this drone was hit in international waters and never violated their integrity, they say that that is false, and they are going to prove it. That's what Iran says. The United States, on the other hand, says it has absolute proof that this drone was hit in international waters, that it never violated Iran's territorial integrity, never violated its airspace. Regardless, we were, according to Trump, and according to what the White House is saying, again, were you there? No. Was I there? No. We don't really know. But according to what the White House is saying, we were 10 minutes away from a situation that very well could have boiled over into a third world war. Very scary. So you have to ask yourself a couple questions here. First thing, is this true? Right? Is it true? Is it true that Trump was deeply concerned about killing 150 Iranians? Doesn't say if they were Iranian civilians or military personnel, but 150 Iranians. Doesn't say if Trump was concerned. We don't know. We know that's what he says. We don't know if that's really what took place. We often know that PR, and they say one thing, they decide this is the story we're going to go with. 20 years later, there'll be a memoir that comes out that says, actually, that wasn't what it was. But it very well could be true, right? It very well could be true that we were 10 minutes away from war, and Donald Trump thought, 150 people versus a piece of military hardware. That doesn't exactly seem right. Maybe I don't want to be the guy who does this. And as much as I am not a Trump fan, and I don't agree with quite a bit of what Trump says, and I think that quite a bit of what he says doesn't check out, I'm leaning toward this being true. And the reason that I'm leaning toward it being true is because of an article in the Atlantic Monthly that pointed out, based on interviews with people in the White House, that as Barack Obama was leaving the White House, he considered his greatest moment in his presidency to be in 2013, when he did not bomb Syria. 2013, when 2013, Obama was on the brink of bombing the Syrian Arab Republic in response to reports about a chemical weapons attack, reports that have been largely, debunked in the aftermath. But in 2013, we were told that the Syrian government had committed a chemical weapons attack in Ghouta, and that all these civilians had been killed. And Obama was basically announcing he was going to go ahead and strike Syria. And, a lot of people in the State Department, people that have gone on to very prominent roles, Samantha Power, all kinds of people, were all over him. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And Obama was able to not be the guy to bomb the Syrian Arab Republic. And he managed to not be the guy to bomb the Syrian Arab Republic and spark a war with Russia and all of the Syrian Arab Republic's allies. And Obama considers that to be the greatest moment in his presidency because the pressure on him to do that was so immense, right? That the people in the back room, the people who run the apparatus of the U.S. state, not the front men we elect, but the people that run the military, the people that run the CIA and the intelligence agencies, those people were determined that Obama needed to be the guy to launch that attack in Syria, and he managed to not be the guy. Right? He managed to say, you know what, I'm the president, and John Kerry, and they made a deal, and Syria joined the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. They turned over all their chemical weapons to the OPCW, and it was done. And Obama considered that to be his greatest achievement. Because none of these people, these politicians, you can think bad things about them, but they all have an ego. And none of them want to be the guy. All right? Lyndon Johnson. They've all seen that video of Lyndon Johnson. I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term in office. Lyndon Johnson was the guy with Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin, the staged incident, the infamous Gulf of Tonkin incident. We were told the Vietnamese had attacked an American ship, so we had to send troops to Vietnam. Years later, we found out it was a big lie, right? Lyndon Johnson was the guy. He was the guy who basically escalated the Vietnam War. Kennedy had sent in military advisors, he had worked with the CIA, and they'd sent weapons and all kinds of stuff. Lyndon Johnson was the guy. He became the guy. He did it. And it destroyed him. He couldn't even bring himself to run for president for re-election. That's it. It broke him. Obama did not want to be that guy. And I have a feeling that Donald Trump didn't want to be that guy either. Maybe for purely selfish reasons. Maybe he didn't care about the civilians. Maybe he did. For whatever reason, he was on the brink of being that guy. The guy who launched war with the Islamic Republic of Iran and de facto the Islamic Republic of Iran's allies. He was on the brink of being that guy. 10 minutes away from being that guy. And he said, I really don't want to be that guy. I don't, a drone versus 150 civilians. I have the quote right here. He said, they shot an unmanned drone, and here we're sitting with 150 dead people, and I didn't like it. He didn't like it. Now, folks, I'm probably going to ruffle a few feathers here. I just got to say it. Do you think Hillary Clinton would have been that guy? I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter. I do not defend his actions. Many of his policies are atrocious to me. But part of me really wonders, does Hillary Clinton have the same fear of being the guy, or the girl, I should say, the woman, in such a situation? I can see Hillary Clinton not have calling it off, not have called it off. Look, this is a very scary situation, I should add, right? So John Kirakou, former CIA, has written an article where he's saying that John Bolton and Trump are not getting along with each other. And he expects that John Bolton will be out soon. And I've pointed out that John Bolton and the neocons and Trump rhetorically do not match. John Bolton has been calling for a military strike against Iran for years. For years, he has been saying, time to bomb Iran, we gotta bomb Iran, now is the time to attack Iran. He's been beating this drum for years. I mean, he would have had us bomb Iran, because Saturday turned into Sunday. He doesn't need a reason. He wants to go to war with Iran. He's written about it, he's spoken about it, he's been saying this since we heard his name for the first time. This guy has wanted a war with Iran. And Trump, on the other hand, he knows that beating up Iran is a crowd pleaser. And he's got a faction in Israel, I should emphasize. Not a lot of Israelis don't like Trump, but there is a faction in Israel, right? The Likud party, Benjamin Netanyahu, Sheldon Adelson, and they love it. Every time Trump says, Iran, I don't like you, we're gonna get you, they applaud. And it wins him donations, and it wins him international support, and it's something that Trump has figured out is a winning formula for him. He advances politically by making noise against Iran. So that's definitely an aspect of the Trump administration, pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, all of that. That is something that has been working for Trump in terms of advancing him politically and all of that. However, it's taken a turn that is very different. It's one thing to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. It's one thing to give anti-Iran speeches. It's one thing to go to Saudi Arabia and say you want to form an Arab NATO to defeat Iran. It's one thing to move the U.S. embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. You can do all of that, but you'll notice that on June 13th. On June 13th, there was an oil tanker. There were 2 oil tankers, in fact, that were attacked. And Trump and the Trump administration and Mike Pompeo. It's very interesting that it's Mike Pompeo. Whenever there was talk of the U.S. bombing a country, I remember, but being a kid, I was in a restaurant with my parents and with some relatives, and there was a TV, and I saw, I am Bill Clinton, President of the United States. I have decided that we are going to take a military strike against Sudan because they're developing weapons. I don't like it. I'm the president. And I remember seeing that. It was the president who did these kind of things. But you'll notice that it's Mike Pompeo who's the guy who comes out and says it. Mike Pompeo comes out and he says, well, there were 2 oil tankers that were attacked, and we blame Iran for it. And then you look at the facts. Now, the 2 oil tankers that were attacked, one of the oil tankers belonged to Iran's oldest friend, right? Norwegian billionaire John Fredrickson. So Norwegian billionaire John Fredrickson, the Ayatollah's lifeline, a billionaire who has been buying and doing oil deals with Iran from the beginning of time. We're to believe that at a time when the Trump administration is trying to stop Iran, from selling oil, drive them off the oil markets, that John Fredrickson, their oldest business partner, they go and they turn around and they attack one of his ships. Don't buy it. And the other ship that they supposedly attacked, the other oil tanker, was owned by a Japanese corporation. And this Japanese corporation, it just so happens, this Japanese corporation is a very prominent corporation, a very big corporation in Iran. And at the very same time that Iran allegedly attacked this, the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, was meeting with Iran's supreme leader, and they were negotiating and talking about trying to save the Iran nuclear deal. So we are to believe that at the time Japan is there trying to save the nuclear deal in the same room as the supreme leader, who's like the Pope of Iran, right? He's above the president. He's like the holy man, the guardian. I mean, that's a whole nother story, but he is the most powerful person in Iran. He's not a political figure, he's a religious figure, he's above politics. And that Iran turns around at that very moment, attacks a Japanese ship, and attacks a ship from their oldest business partner in Europe, right? Doesn't make any sense. And then the Japanese company comes forward, and their version of events does not match with the version put out by Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo says it was attacked one way, and the Japanese company says, no, we were watching our ship, it was attacked a completely different way. And so then Mike Pompeo comes out, and the proof that Iran did it is this video and some pictures of Iranian rescuers, pulling a mine, a limpet mine, that was not diffused out of the ship. So somehow, because Iran pulled this non-diffused, limpet mine out, that proves that Iran attacked the ships. That doesn't match, right? And let's also review the fact that everyone agrees that immediately after these two oil tankers were attacked, it was an Iranian ship that was the first on the scene, rescued the sailors, flew them to Iran to get medical treatment. So if you're trying to destroy a ship and hurt some people, why would you then rescue them? The whole thing doesn't add up. Doesn't add up. Right? In fact, a number of the sailors were Russian nationals. Russia, a longtime friend of Iran. Russia is one of Iran's closest allies. So it's one of their biggest allies, too. So, again, doesn't add up. So the oil tanker thing didn't add up. The Japanese company came out. They didn't match. Their story didn't match. Nothing. That whole thing fell to shreds. So then, we're told, well, they attacked this unmanned drone. And Iran says, yeah, we attacked your drone, but that's because it invaded our territory, right? Foreign country that's our enemy, that doesn't recognize us, that's been trying to overthrow us for years. They fly an aircraft in. Not acceptable, right? We attacked, yes, we did destroy this unmanned drone because it violated our airspace. The United States says, no, it didn't violate the airspace. This was an unprovoked attack in international waters against our drone. And so they're on the brink of attacking 3 different places. Military strikes against 3 different places in Iran. Kill 150 people. Now, we're not hearing whether these were 150 civilians that would have been killed or 150 military personnel. But 150 people, right? One piece of mechanical equipment. The response is killing 150 people. And mind you, Iran, people have it in their heads. Before I went to Iran, and I admit, I'm an American, I watch American media, I got an American education in the American school systems. I thought Iran was an underdeveloped country. I thought Iran was a giant desert. I thought people were riding around on camels. That's not what Iran is, okay? I've been to Iran. Huge highways, huge amounts of infrastructure, huge level of development, universal running water all through the country. Everyone's got a telephone. Everyone's got electricity, no matter where you go in the country. They've wiped out illiteracy. And in addition to that, the country's locked and loaded, right? They've got a ballistic missile system, right? And they have been, for a very long time, almost expecting that Israel will attack them, right? Israel attacked Iraq's nuclear power plants, right? Killed some French people in the process, right? That happened, right? Without any international permission or anything. There was a nuclear power facility in Iraq. There were French workers were working at the facility. French citizens. Israel, boom, attacked Iraq's nuclear power facility. So Iran, with their peaceful nuclear energy program, has been anticipating that Israel would do something like that for a long time. So they have set the country up. They've got it locked and loaded. Someone strikes them, they strike back. So I'm telling you, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't magically predict the future, but 3 strikes against Iran, boom, boom, boom. I can tell you there's a very good chance that a number of U.S. ships in the region, I'm guessing, okay? We have some aircraft carriers there. We've got U.S. forces, fleets in Bahrain and other places. There's a very good chance Iran, you hit 3 of their sites, that missile system goes off, and there's 3 or 4 U.S. ships, 3 or 4, boom, boom, boom. And so then, of course, we're the United States, then boom, 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 and then boom, 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 and this goes crazy, right? And Israel's there, and this had the potential. We're talking Armageddon kind of solutions here, right? The result of such an event taking place. If it was simply Trump's ego, if Trump just wanted to be not the guy, thank goodness, right? Thank goodness for Trump's ego. Or maybe it was fair-mindedness. Maybe he just sat there and said, I'm I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a genius. But I know that 0 and 150 doesn't actually add up. So I'm just going to go with no on this one, guys. No. Good for him. I don't know why he did it. Was it purely he didn't want to be the guy? He didn't want to be Lyndon Johnson. I will not accept another nomination of my party because I started a disastrous war and I can't get us out of it and I ruined everything. Maybe it's that. Maybe he just, knows enough math to know that 150 and 0 are not equal. Maybe he really did have humanitarian concern. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Trump has an Iranian friend. Right? Maybe he has some wealthy Persian person who left after the revolution and they told him 150 Iranians would die. And then he said that in the interview. He said 150 people. I mean, we're talking Iranians here. Well, of course we're talking Iranians. It's Iran. Maybe he thought, do I want to kill 150 guys that are the same as my friend? Maybe that's what happened. I'm not claiming to know what actually went on Trump's mind. I'm going off what he said. Maybe we weren't 10 minutes away, right? I mean, again, we weren't there. Maybe the whole thing, maybe they weren't really 10 minutes away. Maybe they sat there and said, can we strike? This is very possible. I'm throwing this out there. I'm just telling you. It's very possible. They sat there in the back room. They said, can we strike? And they said, no, we can't because Russia and because China and Israel, and it'll be a mess. We can't do it. Okay, well, let's say that we were 10 minutes away. That'll scare it. And that kind of thing happens too, folks. Okay? Look at a history book, okay? We know that what they say to the public and what they decide in the back room doesn't always match up. And that's not just a Trump thing. That's an Obama thing. That's a Clinton thing. That's going back throughout U.S. history. Remember the Maine, Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, right? There's a whole history of them doing, going with one story when the facts are actually different, right? We know that, okay? We know that. So I don't want to pretend. I don't want to turn this into glorious Trump saved us from World War III. Because, it looks like that's what happened. It looks like Trump, for whatever reason, prevented World War III. But we don't know that that's necessarily the case. We want to keep all things, clear here. And that shows how much we can't trust the mainstream U.S. media, right? As much as people like to sit here and think they can believe what's on their TV, I got to tell you, not everything on your TV screen is always true. And I must say, one of the weirdest aspects of geopolitics that we've lately seen is the United States, all these false starts, right? With Venezuela. We saw Venezuelan opposition folks trying to bring humanitarian aid over the border. Venezuela saying, Elliot Abrams, the U.S. Special Envoy for Venezuela, is helping you set this up, and he now admits that he smuggled weapons into Nicaragua, pretending to be humanitarian aid, so we'll get aid from the UN, we'll get aid from Russia, we'll get aid from China, but USA, Elliot Abrams, who admits he smuggles weapons with his aid, not going to happen. We ain't going to take it. So, food is there at the border, and on videotape, the Venezuelan oppositionists light their own aid truck on fire. And then, boom, all of a sudden it's all over CNN and Fox and MSNBC. Maduro lit an aid truck on fire. We were just trying to feed the people that he's starving, and he lit the aid truck on fire. Oh my God! And they're saying maybe we have to invade Venezuela. And it was like a false start. And then the video came out. People that were on the scene revealed what happened. It was pretty clear if you watch the video. It was one of the Venezuelan opposition guys threw something, lit the truck on fire. Maduro did not light that truck on fire. Maduro didn't light the truck on fire. The Venezuelan government didn't light the truck on fire. And the New York Times even admits this, but nobody goes, wait a second, right? They admit this now. Okay, well, it wasn't actually, but no one comes out and says, wait a second, we almost invaded a country on the basis of a staged incident. No one takes Marco Rubio and says, hey, Marco Rubio, millions of people almost died because of this story you were promoting. No one, CNN doesn't say, we should stop believing these Venezuelan opposition. No one says that. No one says, well, we should stop believing Mike Pompeo and Elliot Abrams. Look, they almost got us into a war with Venezuela, and it turned out the whole thing was staged. Nobody says that, right? The New York Times basically admits it's staged. Video shows that it's staged. Everyone basically admits that Venezuela did not light its own aid truck on fire, but no one ever goes, those people that told us that Venezuela lit their aid truck on fire are liars. Maybe we should stop following them. No, it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, that wasn't true. Well, what? Moving on. Baseball. You ever seen a baseball game? Why, I love the Yankees. It's American politics, right? You know, they depend on you having a very, 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 very short memory in this country. They really do. American mainstream media, right? So they tried with Iran to run with this attack their two best friends oil tankers story. That didn't work. So now we came 10 minutes away from a situation that really could have exploded into something very, very, very scary. We came 10 minutes away from it, but luckily, for whatever reason, right? Didn't happen. Trump says he stopped it 10 minutes before it happened because he thought that 150 civilians and one unmanned drone, it wasn't an equivocation. Hey, and, you know, hang me for saying it, hate me for saying it, but would Hillary Clinton have stopped it? Ask yourself that question, right? Think about it. Would Hillary Clinton have not gone ahead with it? You got to ask yourself the question. It's a fair question to ask, folks. It's a fair question to ask. I know it breaks the rules of a lot of the taboos on the left, right? But it needs to be said. Crazy time we're having here. Crazy time. Shout out to Kinky. Shout out to Nathaniel Adams. Glad you all are with us. We are having a great time today. We have so much to talk about. That issue is probably the biggest one. But we have other things we can get into. Shout out to Telsano Durante. Glad you're with us. Shout out to Robert Lawrence, saying I should go on Secular Talk with Kyle Kulinski. Hey, I would love that. Kyle, have me on your show. Same goes to Jimmy Dore. Same goes to anybody. I'd be happy to interact with anybody, right? I believe in truth. We live in a world of deceptions and lies, and, you know, I'm happy to spread the truth anywhere I can. Someone says I should debate Jordan Peterson. Sure, I would be happy to do it. So much to talk about. Welcome, Chronica, right? But yeah, great times we're having here. So, folks, shout out to Argo Nut, who says welcome from Spain. Glad you're with us, Argo Nut. Shout out to Hans Ohm, who's asking about the invasion of Grenada. So, folks, you know that I'm an avid reader of Rupert Murdoch's newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, right? It's owned by Rupert Murdoch. I'm sorry, I'm just going to adjust my seat here. Right? I'm an avid reader of the Wall Street Journal of Rupert Murdoch. And a couple articles have stood out to me. The front page of the weekend edition of the Wall Street Journal, which I have here. U.S. restricts technology exports to Chinese supercomputer makers. Now, it's an honest headline, but the actual story, though, is far, far more interesting. I'm going to read you a paragraph here. This is on the front page. It's not even in the other part. This is on the front page. The Chinese supercomputer developers are at the heart of Beijing's key technological objective of making the country's first exascale computer, a next-generation machine that would be capable of doing 1 quintillion or 1 billion billion calculations per second. Yes. If you can understand what I just read to you, let me repeat myself here, because I think what this paragraph is saying kind of gets to the essence of the China debate, of the USA, of the trade war, everything that's wrong with it, you can find here. Chinese supercomputer developers are at the heart of Beijing's key technological objective of making the country's first exascale computer a next-generation machine that would be capable of doing 1 quintillion or 1 billion billion calculations a second. Didn't make it up. That's in the Wall Street Journal. In that paragraph that I just read you, you can understand what this entire trade war, what geopolitics, what it's all about. Right? The Chinese government believes in historical progress. Right? Whatever criticisms you might have of them, they believe in historical progress, and they believe in statecraft. The concept of statecraft. That the government has an obligation to raise the living conditions of the people and to advance humanity and human civilization. That the state should play a leading role. Now, someone says I'm pronouncing ecoscale incorrectly. I'm sorry. There you go. But basically, China has decided that it is worth, even though they have nowhere near the resources that the U.S. government has, even though they don't have anywhere near the position in the world, the long-standing dominance, that it is in their interest to advance human technology. And with their state-run economy, they have prioritized in Chinese universities and Chinese science tech hubs and all kinds of places. They have decided to make better advances in technology, right? They are going to make cutting-edge breakthroughs. The computer revolution, that really, what the amazing things that shook the world in the 80s and 90s and have more recently done so with the internet, with social media, the info revolution, the data technology, all of that. They've decided that, look, as the government, it is their obligation as the state to invest in advancing human civilization. And part of that is technology. And they've reached out to American companies. No one ever talks about this, but many, many times they have reached out to American companies, American universities, American tech facilities, and said, let's make it a joint operation. We can have Chinese companies like Huawei, Chinese companies like, the different phone and technology hubs, partner with Apple, partner with American universities, partner with Silicon Valley, partner with Google, Alphabet, right? And let's just make this a joint operation, right? Let's do it together. And the United States has said no. And not only has the United States said no, the United States has gone as far as to say, not only are we not going to partner with you in order to do this, but we're going to try and actively stop you from doing it. We are going to turn a potential moment of win-win cooperation, of bringing the world closer together with scientific advancements and technological achievements. And instead, we are going to turn it into a hostile situation. We are going to turn it into a technology war. They are going to bring back that old treaty that they had with NATO, right? The NATO countries had a treaty. No one could give any computer technology to Russia, right? And 16 countries signed on to it. None of them would allow Russia to get any computer revolution breakthroughs. 70s, 80s, Russia was locked out of any computer technology development. They are trying to bring that back. And the article goes on to point out, and this is beyond me, folks. This is right. So at this point, American tech companies, because we have such a bad educational system in the United States, have been importing well-trained Chinese people to work at American tech companies. Why? Because we have an awful educational system here. We aren't churning out engineers and scientists. We don't do that. Math, science, we're like way behind, right? We have low scores in the humanities. We have low scores in everything. But math and science in the USA, forget it. So tech companies have been importing, churning out people that can do it. So now we've got, all of a sudden, the United States is turning down the visas. Is basically saying, tech companies, Silicon Valley, Apple, Google, whatever, you're not allowed to do that. Stop importing Chinese folks to advance our own technology. So not only are we not cooperating with China, not only are we trying to kill their high-tech market, we're not allowing our high-tech companies to import Chinese people to advance our high-tech, right? Chinese nationals accounted for more than 60% of all such licenses between 2013 and 2017, according to the Commerce Department. In 2018, However, they accounted for only 35% of approvals. So, in addition to not joining in China's efforts to build these cutting-edge machines that can do quintillion, calculations and are making these cutting-edge breakthroughs, not only in not joining their efforts, not only trying to kill their efforts and putting sanctions and waging a trade war against their efforts to advance technology, we're not allowing our tech companies to import people to help us do it. I mean, I'm sorry, who do they think is going to do it, right? We can't import people from China who've been trained and who've been going to school and live in the country where they're having the most advanced cutting-edge supercomputers. We can't import any of them because they're bad, because they're China, because they're a bunch of commies. They're communists. Can't import them. Who are they going to have do it? Now, I am, and all due respect to my hometown, right? I'm from a small town in Ohio. All due respect to them. Great people, I'm not... But the education that I received as an average American growing up in Ohio was not amazing, not cutting edge. If there are any teachers I had who won Teacher of the Year awards, they did not deserve them. Folks, I learned when I was in the 6th grade in the American educational system that the Big Bang Theory, my 6th grade teacher, I can tell you, I'm not going to tell you her name, I guess, but she taught us that the Big Bang Theory was about a meteorite that hit the Earth to kill the dinosaurs. Why? Well, because when that meteorite had hit the Earth, it made a big bang, right? Can't you hear the big bang that meteorite would make when it hit the Earth? That's what she taught us in school. In an American public school, that's what we were taught that the Big Bang Theory was. And she said this very matter-of-factly. I remember the look on her face where she said, well, there's this theory that the dinosaurs were killed by a meteorite. It's very controversial, it's actually called the Big Bang Theory. Oh, lordy, right? I had another teacher. He was a gym teacher. Found out that I was calling myself a communist. Came over and he said, why are you a communist? That's like Hitler. I said, no, it's not like Hitler. And he said, yep, communist is like Hitler. So we had a whole conversation, me and my gym health teacher in high school, and I told him what I believed as a communist, I didn't understand it as well as I do now, obviously, but I had that conversation. And he insisted that what I was describing when talking about communism was not communism, that was called Commonwealth. And that was the system that they have in Canada, because it is the Commonwealth of Canada, right? You hold the wealth in common, it's a commonwealth. Hitler was a communist, he said. But Commonwealth, that's where everyone gets free health care and everyone has a job, and that's what they have in Canada. It's a commonwealth. But we in America are a democracy. We don't believe in commonwealth. That was the education I got in the United States of America. So they want people with that kind of education. People who graduated from high schools like mine, where they learned that Commonwealth is the system, where people have jobs and all of that, and that communism is Hitler. Schools where they learn that the Big Bang Theory is about a dinosaur getting killed by a meteorite that hit the Earth and made a really big bang. They want people who graduated from high schools like the one I went to advance the technological revolution. Are we stupid? No, we're not. We just have very, very, very stupid people running our government. And I shouldn't even say stupid. We have very, very blindly self-interested people, right? In the long term, teaming up with China to make amazing supercomputers would be good for the United States. But it wouldn't be good for big oil companies, but it would lead to Chinese corporations becoming wealthier and competing with us. In the short term, it would cut into the dominance of American big banks and corporations, right? China's ability to produce its own goods and manufacture its own technology would increase. People would buy more Chinese cell phones and less American cell phones. People would, the big oil companies really don't like China. They really don't like China, folks. Let me emphasize that. They really don't like China because China is the leading electric car market in the world. And China is trying to get the world off fossil fuels desperately because they know that's why they're vulnerable. The big oil companies, the big tech companies in the United States, all of them are saying, oh my God, we can't team up with China to make advances. And we can't let China keep making advances on their own. And we can't keep importing Chinese people to help our... No. Just build a big wall around China. Build a blockade around China. That is the dumbest policy. I'm sorry. Now, I'm not a math and science guy. I was never good at math. Never very good at math. science, I got good grades in science, but do I understand it? Can I sit here and tell you about biology and all of that? Not really. I'm a humanities kind of guy. But I can tell you, people who went to the high school that I went to in the United States and Ohio, if you think that we, the Americans with the lowest test scores in math, the lowest test scores in science in all the Western developed countries, you think that they're going to have us go to Silicon Valley and I mean, unless things, greatly, greatly change in the American educational system by not bringing Chinese nationals to Silicon Valley, we are screwing ourselves. I mean, this is the result of pessimism. Pessimism. When pessimism overtakes a society, and the belief that there's something good on the horizon fades away, this is what happens. We don't think there's a good tomorrow, right? We don't. The Republicans think everything's going to pieces because we're not in the 1950s anymore. The liberals think that everything's going to pieces because there's too many people and because we're polluting the earth and because of, we're all, it's too selfish. Pessimism is everywhere. We have been cursed by this pessimism. And only if you are a pessimist can you think that, hey, there's this big country that is pouring billions and billions of status, and we say, nope, can't do it, and we're going to try to stop them from doing it. This is the result of pessimism, right? This is the result of pessimism. We are being cursed by pessimism in this country. Someone said, Caleb, college is kind of a letdown because of people that are not excited about learning. That was my experience too. I always enjoyed learning. I was very excited about the topics I was learning about, and I think I got on everybody's nerves, and that's a fact. Thanks for pointing that out. And I think I'm not the only person with that experience. I've met many people who are disappointed by the American university system because they actually want to learn, and that we have an educational system that basically rewards conformity and kind of frowns on people that actually are interested in the topic. That's a reality, and I've elaborated on that before, but somebody gave me a super chat and wanted me to highlight that, so I'll say it again. I will, right? It's a big problem that we have where, I don't want to get too specific here, okay? I'm going out on a limb here, but I've been in some situations in life where I've been around some people that have jobs. I'm very vague, but I have to be. I have some jobs that are highly, highly competitive, and I have been in, certain institutions where I'm me. I got there because I'm me in my unique circumstances, but I'm surrounded by people who went to Harvard and Yale and elite schools, and I'm certainly not in this situation anymore, but at one point I was working a certain place and I was surrounded by people who were like the cream of the crop, right? These are people that got where they got because they went to elite schools and had great grades at those elite schools. And I would engage with people and have conversations at this place I was working. I would engage with them about Syria, and I would engage with them about international issues. And I'm talking to really, really, really well-educated folks, people that were supposed to be the smartest people in the United States. And I was blown away. Talking to some of these people, and I was just shocked to realize that a lot of these people who go to Harvard, and a lot of these people who go to Yale, and a lot of these people that go to elite schools and all of that, do not comprehend that there are more than two sides to an issue. And it was shocking for me to sit with somebody who had been at the top of their class at Yale, top of their class at Harvard, and sit there and go, well, not everyone agrees that Assad is necessarily using these chemical weapons. Some of that's disputed. And hear them go, it is? Right? To sit there and say, well, I tend to think the Syrian government has a few points. What points could there possibly be? To sit there and talk about Syria with people that are in very, very important positions that are very, very hard to get jobs, sit there and not realize that there are two sides to every story, right? I mean, you don't have to understand the left, anti-imperialist, whatever. You don't even have to understand that, right? It's just kind of common sense, right? That, when it comes to the Civil War, there's a lot of people most people sympathize with the North, but there's this movie called Gone with the Wind that tells a retelling, a Southern, that's another version of events. That there are often two versions of events out there. Gone with the Wind is the racist slaveholder perspective on the Civil War, and, you can read, Karl Marx and his pro-union, anti-slavery perspective on the war. Karl Marx was right, the South was wrong, but there are two versions of events. But when I talked to these people who had gone to Harvard and Yale about Syria, and I would say, the Syrian government it was like, no comprendo. It had never occurred to them that there was a pro-Syrian government side to the Syrian civil war. They assumed that everyone who fought for the Syrian government was doing so because they were afraid Assad would kill them or something. It was like, no comprendo. That, it was this very, 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 very bizarre thing. And I was watching this, but I realized there's a reason that these people got to the top of U.S. society. Because they're conformists. Right? That we have an educational system that frowns on actual interest in the subject, that frowns on creativity, that frowns on actually caring about anything. But if you're a little conformist who can sit there and repeat back whatever your teacher says and say all the right things and you move ahead and you get to the top, it's a problem. And it's a problem in other countries too. And, socialist countries have had this same problem. And it's a widespread problem that just happens, right? Is that you develop an apparatus where you just get people repeating the same kind of thing. It's a problem. And I think that's what the Super Chat was about. I thank you for the Super Chat. I'm having a great time here. Don't want to dwell too much on that educational stuff. But anyhow, I'll get back to the thing about optimism and pessimism later, because it's a point I wanted to make, but there's a couple other things I wanted to talk about. But, when I raised this issue about statecraft, this notion that is the duty of the government to oversee economic progress, to raise living standards, the recent speech we heard from the Russian president, he basically spells this out. According to the Wall Street Journal write-up of the speech, Mr. Putin pledged to boost Russians' quality of life and fight poverty through major infrastructure projects, increased social spending programs, and help lift up the economy. And this is a quote from Russian President Vladimir Putin: modernize the economy, make it high technology, raise labor productivity, and on this basis improve living standards for our citizens, as well as ensure the security of our state in the long term. That was, President Putin addressing the country. And I've told this story before, but it must be said, why did Russian President Vladimir Putin get elected? He got elected because in the 1990s, Russia had free market capitalism, right? The Yeltsin administration was deregulating and privatizing everything. They had Jeffrey Sachs, the psychopath free market economist from Columbia University, privatizing things, overseeing deregulation, and it was a mess. It was a disaster. Mass unemployment, the farming system shut down, the factories were closing their doors, heroin was everywhere, people were dying, people were fleeing the country. Russia in the 1990s, they put into practice the ideas of Ben Shapiro, the ideas of Dinesh D'Souza, the ideas promoted on Fox News, that the free market, privatize everything. They did it. They had a free market experiment in Russia under the Yeltsin administration, and it was a disaster. And Vladimir Putin ran on a platform of saying he would fix the economy by making the oil and gas the center of the economy, by making oil and gas national champions. And he wrote his PhD dissertation on the concept of using natural resources like oil and natural gas, using them as the basis for a state-run economy, right? Center an economy, a market economy, center it around a state, a government that controls the oil and gas. He wrote this as an academic thesis, got his PhD, ran for president on the basis of, I am going to fix the economy by centering it around oil and gas. And Vladimir Putin got elected, and he did it. And it took him a while, but he basically maneuvered Gazprom and Rosneft. Gazprom is the natural gas company. Rosneft is the giant oil company. All right? And he maneuvered that, and it rebooted their economy. By centering the Russian economy around the state, by utilizing their natural resources, what he had figured out at university through his research about how to rescue the country, he put into practice, and he saved the economy. And, especially 2003, 2004, when Bush is invading Iraq and blows an oil-producing country to bits, when Bush imposes sanctions on Iran, when Nigeria has an oil strike, the oil prices went through the roof, so the Russian government's revenue, oil and gas, also went through the roof, and Russia saw itself be repaired from the disaster of free market capitalism, right? And again, Vladimir Putin's not a Marxist, not a communist, definitely not any of those things, but as you just heard him say, as I read to you from the article, he understands that his goal, his job as the president of Russia is to raise the living conditions of the people, to advance technology, to increase the living standards. He believes in statecraft, all right? It's almost like we've regressed, right? The Cold War, we were talking capitalism and communism. Now we're talking statecraft versus anarchy, right? The rule in the West is the government is best that governs least. Laissez-faire, you can let the market take care of itself. The government doesn't have any role in the economy. If you got a problem, it's your fault. Why should the government make life better? What's that about? There's no need for the government. We don't need no stinking government, right? Everyone can get rich if you just privatize. That's what we think in the West. And in Russia and in China, they say, well, no, we have a government for a reason, and the government's job is to lead all society and advance human civilization. In Russia, in China, in Iran, in Venezuela, in Bolivia, in Cuba, in North Korea, in all these countries that we don't like in the United States, they still believe in the basic concept of statecraft, that you need a government of action to lead society. They still believe in this basic concept, the concept that got us out of the Dark Ages. They still believe that in Russia and in China and in all the countries that you're supposed to hate. They still believe that. The government, and I'm sure those governments have done not good things. I mean, we know that, right? And our government's done plenty of not good things too, of course, but regardless of whatever you want to say, they still believe that the state has an obligation to raise people's living conditions, to take care of people, and to advance human progress. And we in the West, first of all, we don't believe in human progress anymore. We don't believe in that, right? We believe, the world's going to hell, everything's falling apart. The right wing, the religious folks, they believe, Jesus is going to come, it's the Armageddon time, everything's just going to get worse, right? On the one hand. On the left, we say, there's too many people, and we're all using too many resources, and we're all too materialistic, and people have it too good. We've all abandoned the concept of historical progress. Now, I'm being asked in a super chat about how does China plan to handle automation? Well, I'm not there, okay? And I am not there, but I'm telling you that if you listen to the lectures of Jack Ma, in particular, right? Jack Ma, at this point, is the richest person in China. If you listen to him, they are thinking about it. And they are definitely thinking about it. And they are orienting their economy around it. And if you read the Chinese press, there are a lot of articles about the news service sector economy in China. And overall, there is a feeling that the government has an obligation to deal with automation, right? And not deal with it in the way of outlawing new technology so people stay in jobs that are obsolete, but rather reorienting things, right? In China, they got the Future Hotel. I'm sure you've heard about that Future Hotel that they have in China, right? It's in the model city that President Xi is building. It's a future hotel that you can check into by just walking in. There's no clerk. You walk into your room. Why? Because it scans your facial technology, right? No clerk at the hotel. It's called the Future Hotel. They are all about automation in China, but there is this understanding that the government has an obligation to make sure that automation works for the benefit of all society. The state controls the means of production. The economy is planned. It's different than over here. And that's a whole nother thing. And automation is a big issue. And, I have been very critical of the presidential campaign of Andrew Yang. I've been very critical of it. And there are a lot of things that he has said along the way that I don't necessarily agree with. However, when he raises that issue of automation, that's very important. I wish Bernie Sanders would talk more about the issue of automation, right? The fact that Tucker Carlson, the right-wing commentator, he addressed the issue of automation. This is something we should all be thinking about, right? The fact that Amazon is putting all the Main Street stores out of business, that there aren't any malls anymore, That's big, because remember during the Obama years, right? Well, we don't have any steel mills anymore, folks. We don't have any more steel mills, but we got a service sector economy. You can work at the mall. No mall, no more. Right? The service sector is fading away, right? Wall Street people, right? We've got at this point AI, artificial intelligence, AI devices that can actually, I kid you not, trade stocks more effectively than human beings. They can predict trends on the stock market better than people can. We've got artificial intelligence devices that can play chess better than people can, right? AI has a lot of power, and how do we deal with this issue of artificial intelligence? How do we deal with the rise of the machines? We need to have a society-wide conversation about it, right? We need to talk about healthcare, we need to talk about gun control, we need to talk about all these different issues. But we also need to talk about artificial intelligence. I'm glad Andrew Yang's doing it. Now, he proposes universal basic income. I see some key problems with universal basic income. I think that the only way we can ultimately deal with the problem of automation is with the means of production being rationally controlled by society. With socialism, I think the banks, factories, and industries need to be rationally operated. If they're operated to make profit, automation simply means kicking more people out and eliminating more places at the assembly line. In capitalism, you only exist if you can sell your labor power to a boss. If no boss is hiring you, then you have no, place in society. And automation will result in millions and millions and millions being outcast and starving. And that's a big problem. We talk about self-driving cars, right? So no Uber drivers, no truck drivers, no cab drivers, you go down the line. Bad problem. No shipping. Right? Self-driving cars in and of themselves have the ability to completely wreck our economy, right? Automation is coming. And actually that brings me to another article I was planning to talk about. Automation's coming to McDonald's. Special article about it. The company is testing voice recognition software and a drive-thru in suburban Chicago. Inside the restaurant, a robot also tosses chicken and fish into vats of oil. Folks, I remember I never worked at McDonald's, but when I was in college, I worked at a fast food sandwich place for a few months. I wasn't very good at it. They didn't like the pace that I was working at. I'm kind of a spacey guy. I wasn't very good at it. But I remember working at a fast food sandwich place while I was studying at the university. And, I remember standing over that hot oil, dipping the French fries into the hot oil. How my face, every day after work, I went and took a shower because I was standing over that boiling, much as, your face is very far away, it affects you. And I remember every day after work, I would scrub my face to make sure I wasn't getting that grease from that pit on there. It's not fun. These fast food workers, there's this whole meme, and, I think they deserve $15 an hour, but there's this whole meme of every time your order doesn't come on time, you're supposed to get on social media and go, they don't deserve $15 an hour, I'm a conservative. But, folks, I did that kind of work for a while, and I'll tell you, you come home exhausted, it's fast-paced. And I remember doing that. Well, now they're going to eliminate those folks with machines. And I got to say, McDonald's. McDonald's is really, really, really an evil corporation. It really is, right? And you want to say, well, they're just a capitalist company, right? They're just trying to make a profit. This is Roy Kroc's little empire. But, the Kroc family's entity, McDonald's, whoo. I'll read you, Other fast food chains are also exploring automation to quicken operations and cut costs in an expensive labor market. Minimum wages are increasing in many states and unemployment is at record lows. Unemployment's low. It's so frustrating for those McDonald's capitalists. All right, Mason Smoot, a McDonald's senior vice president overseeing key innovations, says union organizers tried to organize McDonald's employees in recent years and have said that automation would eliminate jobs. Right? Now, Old Gringo is saying a jobs guarantee program. He's asking me about that. Old Gringo. Well, I think that a guaranteed jobs program would be great. And, I will say that is one thing when I was an activist that I'm very proud of, is that during the financial crisis, I was part of a lot of protests in the aftermath, 2009, 2010, when there was, after the financial meltdown, me and many activists and many leftists, well, not many, it should have been a lot more, we marched down Wall Street chanting, "A job is a right. Fight, fight, fight. A job is a right. Fight, fight, fight." Right? Education is, and I mean, that was the answer, right? In the situation that we were in, where there was mass unemployment in the aftermath of the 2008-2009 financial crash, it seemed like common sense, with the crumbling infrastructure of the country, they should have immediately hired the unemployed to start rebuilding the country, especially then when there was mass unemployment. Now, at this point, unemployment is pretty low. However, at that point, you had massive unemployment, you had people getting kicked out of their homes, you had people living in tents in Nevada. There's still plenty of that going on, especially in Southern California. There's a lot of people that are homeless. There's whole tent cities of homeless people, and a lot of homeless people have jobs, right, mind you. They always make it sound like these homeless people, they can't work, they're all mentally ill. No, there's a lot of homeless people at this point who have jobs, right? We've got a high employment rate. We've got a lot of people that are homeless. They have a job. They just don't have enough to pay their bills, especially in urban areas because of gentrification. That's a whole nother story. But regardless, absolutely, I am for a jobs guarantee. Absolutely, right? And I think that unemployment, the reserve army of labor, it's one of the most irrational things. When someone's unemployed, it's bad for them, right? Martin Luther King said that, we all have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, but if a man doesn't have a job, he neither has life nor liberty, nor can he pursue happiness. He merely exists. That's Martin Luther King Jr. He was right. So it's bad for you if you're unemployed, but it's also bad for society, right? Every person should be viewed, I believe, personally, I think every person should be viewed as an asset to society, right? Every person has something to contribute to society, right? And when people are unemployed because of the market, there's somebody who could be building things, somebody who could be thinking of new ideas, somebody who could be making some kind of contribution. And instead, we're saying, well, whatever you have to offer, we don't need it. Nope. Stupid. All these unemployed people are it's like our society as a whole is being offered $1,000, and they're like, no, we don't want that. We don't need that. Keep your money. No. I don't need an extra $1,000, right? Every one of these young people, and a lot of them aren't counted in the unemployment numbers. It's a tragedy. You get out of school, right? You never really get a good paying job that's enough to actually go out on your own. That's a reality a lot of young people live with, right? The amount of money that adults, that parents are spending on their adult children is unbelievable. And, a lot of these young people aren't included in the unemployment statistics because in order to be counted as unemployed, right, you have to have had a decent full-time job and lost it, right? And that a lot of these young people, they get a short-term job here, they get a short-term job there. They work at Walmart with their college degree, and they work at CVS pharmacy. They work at one place, they work at another place, and the state basically says to them, society basically never really finds a way to plug them in and get anything out of their labor, and they just kind of exist and they float around, right? And they use drugs. Unfortunately, a lot of them use drugs, heroin, opioids. Their family says to them, you're a loser. You're a loser. Why don't you get your life together? When I was 20, I didn't even graduate high school, and I was working in an auto plant, and you got a college degree, and you must be a loser, right? Nothing changed in the economy. Their parents give them judging lectures, right? Society looks at them and says that you failed at life, right? And a lot of these people just have an element of rage. Sometimes that rage is internalized as depression. Other times that rage comes out at other people on the internet. The internet is full of, people my age and younger screaming and yelling, full of rage, right? It's part of the realities. We have told the millennial generation, we don't need you, right? And this millennial generation, more college educated and more student debt, and more college educated than any other generation in the past, right? They know how to use computers. Yes, I'm not claiming they're as smart as those tech folks we want to import from China and aren't allowed to anymore, but, they have something to offer. And we as a society, we don't see them as an asset. But folks, if you've been joining us, and I know we're doing pretty well here, a lot of folks are joining us, but if you're new, please tweet this out. Cut and paste the link, put it on your Twitter and say, "Oh my God, what did Caleb just say? Can you believe this? Join the conversation." Get on your Facebook, post the link and say, join us. All right, let's make this a big conversation. Later in the live, I am going to talk about what makes this so special, right? I am going to talk about what we do here. The conversations that we have here are not like anything you've ever seen. Stanley's asking me about Jay Sakai. Might get to that later. Glad you asked, Stanley. But why is what we do here so special? Why are the conversations that we have on these lives different? Somebody said to me the other day, nice young woman, young activist and student here in New York, we were talking over lunch. She said to me, I've noticed, Caleb, all the other socialists and communists, they don't really sound like you. And I said, yeah, I've noticed that. Well, there's a reason for that. And I'm going to get to that. But before I get to that, I need you to tweet this out and say, join Caleb Maupin, join the conversation, be part of it, right? This Stanley guy, never heard of him before. He asked me about Jay Sakai. I addressed it. Bring your friends. Bring a crowd. Let's make this a big conversation. Rick Fry is talking about millennials. I hear you, Rick. Old Gringo is engaging in a conversation with another person. The conversations in these chats are really wild. I reread them afterwards. Because I'm doing this over my iPhone, I only see select tweets. I know like Swine Class has said some stuff. Kinky is talking, but I'm not seeing everything everyone says because for some reason, I'm only seeing a selected thing. But afterwards, the chat conversations are crazy. Drunken Boatswan says, "No, I said that. Lol." Well, there you go. But, this is crazy. So please, folks, tweet this out. Let's make this a bigger conversation. We have so much to talk about. Pasta is asking about environmental collapse. I'll get to that. I'll put that on my list of things to discuss. Oh my God, we are having a great night here. I am feeling great, folks. Pasta, I'm writing down your question about environmental collapse. I just wrote it down there. I'm going to get to it. But folks, while we're on the topic, of China, right? We've talked a lot about China. I want to give attention to the Hong Kong protest thing that's going on right now. And I just want to say something, okay? And disagree with me if you want, but let's imagine that the city of Chicago had a law that nobody in Chicago could be extradited to stand trial in another state, right? Imagine that they actually had a law in the state of Chicago that, hey, no matter what you do, we handle it here in Chicago, right? You defraud people in Oregon, you defraud people in New York, you defraud people in, Arizona, we handle it in Chicago, right? And imagine that Chicago had a completely different legal system than the rest of the country. And we said, you know what? Not only are the people in Chicago having a completely different legal system, completely different laws, but if they go to other parts of the country and break the law, we handle it in our completely different stand trial for what they do in other parts of the country. No other country in the world would allow that. That's what the issue behind the Hong Kong protests is, folks. Don't believe me? Look it up. It's about extradition. They're not even saying they want to extradite people from Hong Kong over crimes they commit in Hong Kong. Basically, the way it's set up now, if you're a business owner in Hong Kong and you defraud people and you break the law in mainland China, you can't be extradited to mainland China to stand trial. That's ridiculous. Hong Kong is part of China, has always been part of China, always. It was seized by the British Empire, but it is now part of China, just like Taiwan, just like Tibet. And yes, there has been one country, two systems, and they are continuing one country, two systems, right? They're letting Hong Kong maintain its unique legal structure, but they're saying that if you are in Hong Kong and you break the law in the mainland, they can extradite you. Folks, if you break the law in the United States, right, they can extradite you, right, from somewhere else. If I broke the law and fled to I don't know about Zimbabwe, but if I broke the law and I fled to Britain, Britain has a treaty where they would extradite me back to the United States. If I broke the law and I fled to Canada, Canada has a treaty with the United States, they would extradite me. But right now, in Hong Kong, which is part of China, one of China's own cities, they have a law that if you break the law in mainland China, they handle it in Taiwan. I mean, that's what the issue is in these protests. Do you think that that is right? And no, it's not for people who steal a candy bar in mainland China and flee to Hong Kong. That's not what it's about. It's very clear. You read the articles, it's very, 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 very clear what it's about. It's about the business community. It's spelled out. Read the articles. The business community, the corporations, the big corporations headquartered in Hong Kong want the right to be able to break the law in mainland China and not face justice for it in mainland China. I mean, that's the issue. That is the issue in the protests. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. That is the issue. The business community does not like the fact that they can be extradited from Hong Kong to China over crimes they commit in China when Hong Kong is China to begin with. Again, we would never set up an agreement where Chicago had people from Chicago could break the law in other parts of the United States and we don't handle it anywhere but in Chicago. I mean, and you read more of the details, your head wants to explode even more. Like, you look into it, right? For example, why is this such a big deal? Well, they say, well, Hong Kong has a very differently structured legal system. Their legal system is more like the Western legal system. And the business community likes their legal system better. Right, because in Hong Kong, their legal system's a lot like our system, where if you hire a rich lawyer, you can get away with anything, and if you're a low-income person, you don't stand a chance, right? That yes, all the business community like the fact that in Hong Kong, they can hire a rich lawyer who, knows all the right things to say to the judge, and in China, where the court system is fully controlled by the Communist Party, they don't have the ability to buy their way out of committing crimes. I mean, this is, folks, and the last time things got going in Hong Kong, when the Occupy Hong Kong thing was going, it was very blatant. The people doing the Hong Kong protests are the rich kids. It's the rich kids of Hong Kong. And the people who don't like it are ordinary people. Right? They can't even get away from this in mainstream media reports, right? They have to mention it. That's how blatant it is. The Hong Kong protests are class divided. It's the rich kids of Hong Kong versus the working class of Hong Kong. I'll even read you. As biased as American media reporting on this is, they can't cover this up. I've got an article here. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? I mean, in every report, the last time this was going, Occupy Hong Kong, you'll remember that whole thing, as Occupy Hong Kong was going, they talked about how it wasn't the police that went and beat up the Occupy Hong Kong people. It was the people who worked in downtown office buildings. It was the average moms and dads. It was average people in Hong Kong who wanted their lives to get better, who wanted to just live their lives and sympathize with China, think that they are Chinese, right? Identify with the Chinese government. Average people didn't like Occupy Hong Kong, and it was rich people who sympathized with it. And now, you can't even cover it up. Enough is enough, said 40-year-old Mary Lamb, a financial services worker who couldn't get a taxi the following day because of disrupted appointments. I have my rights too, and these protesters are taking them away. And folks, the icing on the cake, I must say, the icing on the cake is the pictures that I see. Widely tweeted out, pictures that I see of Hong Kong protesters. Not only are they waving the British colonial flag, right? The flag of the old, Hong Kong that has a Union Jack in the corner. They're also, in more than a few instances, displaying the full Union Jack, the British Empire flag, all by itself. Furthermore, there are signs saying that things were great, hailing the British Empire, talking about the Queen of England. There is a sign. There are photos of this, signs in English saying that, Hong Kong was great under the Queen. The Queen made Hong Kong a jewel of the East. I mean, it's, folks, the British Empire, you want to talk about an evil institution, right? No one ever talks about this, right? They'll tell you communism killed a gamillion. No one talks about country after country after country. The British killed millions of people, right? In India, there was a man-made famine where millions and millions of people starved to death from hunger. And you got, Winston Churchill very famously saying, well, the problem is that they breed like rabbits. They're inferior rabble. You have the British Empire, when the Iraqi people are fighting for their independence. Even after the Geneva Convention, even after they've banned chemical weapons, you have chemical weapons, poison gas, being used against the Iraqis as they fight for their independence. And they're destroying whole towns and villages with poison gas in the 1920s. And they asked Winston Churchill about it, and he says, well, poison gas is, the Geneva Convention protects men, not uncivilized tribes like these Arabs. Right? The British Empire used chemical weapons against the Arab people. It starved millions of people to death in India. Read about what they did in the Caribbean, how they would slaughter entire villages and, whole scores of people because of a slave revolt. Read about what they did in Asia. HSBC Bank, that is a British bank. It is a British bank. It's based in London. But what does HSBC stand for? That's Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. Why is there a bank in London? A bank that's basically tied in with British Petroleum. Why is the BP Bank called Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation? It's because this was a bank set up to handle the British domination of the Chinese economy, right? And what was one of the main things that HSBC Bank did? Sell drugs, heroin, opium. The British waged 2 opium wars. When the emperor tried to say, we don't allow you to ship drugs into our country, the British waged not 1, but 2 opium wars. Opium wars. To force China to accept narcotics and to accept the destruction of its domestic economy and its domination by the British Empire. The British seized Hong Kong. The Germans seized Qingdao. I mean, you read about this, right? For any person in Hong Kong or in China, or Hong Kong is China, in any part of China, including Hong Kong, to be praising the British Empire, it's beyond me. And again, average people in Hong Kong ain't buying it, right? I think that average people in Hong Kong are not worried about whether or not rich CEOs are allowed to break the law in the mainland of China and get extradited for it. So that was my spouting off about the Hong Kong protests. Now, do they have some perhaps legit grievances about human rights and corruption and other issues? I'm sure they do. I'm sure that they have other legit concerns. But the actual issue that the protests are about, should mainland China be able to extradite people from Hong Kong for crimes they committed in mainland China? I'm not with them at all. And that's the issue. That shows you what these protests are really about, okay? I mean, if you think this is a glorious revolution of the people, you're delusional. All right? This is about making sure rich CEOs are free to break the law in mainland China and not face consequences for it in mainland China. Just saying. What else is on people's minds? Oh, hey, we're talking China tonight. So there's a Swiss bank called UBS. I don't know if people have heard about it. Swiss bank, one of their top economists, one of the main guys they put out there as their guru, their brilliant guy for UBS Bank. He was on a podcast. He made a rather nasty comment about, quote, Chinese pigs. Yeah, turns out a few people in China heard about that. not too happy. Not exactly the nicest thing to say. UBS Bank is in big trouble. They're losing investors like wildfire, right? It's causing them big problems. All right? I think it's amusing, right? Trump is trying to tell us, and the Trump administration, Tim Lighthizer, people like that are trying to tell us, hey, cutting off China is great, having nothing to do with their economy. Look at what one financial institution is dealing with at this point because of a racist comment that was made about China. UBS, the Swiss bank, is sinking right now over a racist comment that was made on a podcast by Paul Donovan, their brilliant whatever. I'm not saying he's brilliant, but some guy that they projected to be their great economist. And, he made a racist comment, and he's sinking. So if you think that putting up a big tariff barricade against China is not going to have any consequences for our economy, think about that. Look at what's happening to UBS Bank right now, right? Just wanted to throw that out there. I also wanted to mention, there's a lot in the press about the fact that President Xi Jinping has been meeting with the president. Didn't go and meet, I shouldn't say has been meeting with, but had a public state-to-state, official visit with the president of North Korea, the head of state. And that meeting took place, and, there's a lot about it in American media. And what I think is interesting is, first of all, it needs to be said that there's a long relationship between North Korea and China. In fact, Mao Zedong's own son, Mao and Yang, that was the son of Mao Zedong. When Mao Zedong was the president of China, was leading China, his son, Mao and Yang, died in the Korean War, right? The Chinese People's Liberation Army went to, support North Korea as it was facing off with the United States. And when that happened, Mao's own son was killed in the war. During that war, North Korea became the only country, Army general too, and that was a big war that happened, and there's a long-standing relationship. Now, very briefly, there was a falling out between the two countries, and that was in the 1970s, and that was when you had the Gang of Four in China, Mao's wife, 3 other people, fanatical ultra-leftist cultural revolution. And they did not like the fact that that North Korea was neutral between China and the Soviet Union. China and the Soviet Union were not getting along. The Gang of Four in China said that the Soviet Union was the main danger to the people of the world. They were putting forward the 3 worlds theory. And on the basis of that, they welcomed Nixon. Nixon was a hero. They gave him a big parade. At the same time, he was bombing Vietnam and killing people. And it was during that time that there was a falling out. And from what I understand, there were actually demonstrations at the border with North Korea where they referred to Kim Il-sung as they called him a revisionist pig and all of that. And that was the Gang of Four. But that's ancient history. It's not ancient history. It was a long time ago, right? And the Gang of Four, when Deng Xiaoping came to power, he ended the Cultural Revolution and he jailed the Gang of Four. They were locked up for what they did. And China and North Korea have been getting along. The fact that there has not been an official state visit between a North Korean head of state and a Chinese head of state until now, that's big. And that was a favor to the United States. The United States doesn't like North Korea. North Korea, is facing UN sanctions because of the fact that they quit the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, developed nuclear weapons. And so, basically, probably as a favor to the U.S., there hasn't been an official state visit. But now, the USA is giving its middle finger to China. The USA is doing everything it can to wreck China's economy. And so China's saying, okay, well, we were backing off with North Korea, but hey, their relations with North Korea are expanding. What do you expect? It's just the natural order of events. And as I've said before, and it must be said, it's only a matter of time. Eventually, North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons, and it's going to have the UN sanctions against it lifted, and it's going to join what's happening in that part of the world. What's happening in the far east of Russia, what's happening in the rural parts of China, what's happening in Central Asia is amazing, right? Asil Toji, I heard him say it. I was at the Valdi Discussion Club in Russia. I heard him say it. Asil Toji of the Norwegian Nobel Institute was talking about how in Eurasia, In the Eurasian subcontinent, it is a golden era, right? Railways are being built. Whole areas are being lit up with electricity. At this point, we have got, just a boom that is taking place. I mean, in the Russian Far East, you've got a farming boom. Russia has gone, in the 1990s when they had free market capitalism, Russia was dependent on the United States. It was importing all of its food from Eastern Europe and from the United States. Well, now Russia is having a farming boom. The Russian government has created an agricultural boom, right? I mean, they are just bringing technology to all kinds of different areas. They are bringing electricity. They're bringing highways and railways. I mean, it's you don't know what's happening in that part of the world, right? And U.S. media has made a point of making sure you don't know about it. But amazing, amazing things are happening in Eurasia right now. But there's a big black hole in the middle of it. There's a big block, right? The Eurasian Economic Union, the One Belt, One Road Initiative, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. There's this big hole in it, and it's called North Korea. Right? Russia and China, both members of the UN Security Council, they're not going to violate those sanctions. North Korea developed nuclear weapons. It violated, or it pulled out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Because of that, you can't really trade with them the way you would trade with any other country. Well, at this point, South Korea really wants to trade with North Korea. China really wants to trade with North Korea. Russia really wants to trade with North Korea. Everyone wants to trade with North Korea. In order for North Korea to do that, they need to give up their nuclear weapons, right? Because Russia and China really want the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to stay intact. It's very important that we don't have countries all over the world getting nukes, left and right. So, at some point, it's going to happen. Listen to Jim Rogers, the legendary investor, right? Very famous American investor. He used to be a pal of George Soros. Now he's a conservative libertarian. But, he was saying, look, it's going to happen. And what's going on here? The reason Trump had his meeting, his handshake with Kim, the reason he did it is because they want to make sure that American companies get a slice of the pie. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Not going to happen immediately. Give it 5 years, give it 10 years, probably sooner than that. North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons. Everyone in that part of the world knows that. Only a matter of time. And when that happens, there's going to be millions of people who are all literate, and a lot of them college educated. The North Korean population is very, very educated. Free university education. They have poured a lot of education into their population. They're going to be up for hire. A lot of them speak many different languages. Chinese, English, On top of that, those mountains. That's the mountainous part of the Korean peninsula, right? Korea's had issues with food because of, the fact that they're the mountainous part. The arable land is in the south. However, huge mountains. Those mountains in North Korea are full of coal. They are full of minerals. They are full of gold. They are full of all kinds of stuff. Right? Only a matter of time before North Korea, they give up their nukes and they join the world economy. And Trump, being a businessman, being a self-centered businessman like he is, he knows, and he is trying to make sure that when North Korea is open for business, when they have their Deng Xiaoping moment, right? When that happens, right? He wants to make sure that American companies, and probably his own American companies, he wants to make sure that they get a slice of it. And that's what this is about. Only a matter of time. Only a matter of time, right? That this huge block, this barrier in the middle of the booming Silk Road, Eurasian Economic Union explosion. This block, right? I mean, it's crazy. There's the Trans-Asian Railway system that the UN set up, right? It starts in South Korea, goes through North Korea, goes into China, goes into Russia, takes it all the way to Poland and Europe and Western Europe, right? I mean, it's ready to get going. They're going to have a train connecting. I mean, it's happening. It's happening. It's only a matter of time. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on here, folks. If you want to know what's going on there. And furthermore, I believe there are entities inside of the U.S. government apparatus, within the Trump administration, and within the intel agencies, among people who don't like Trump and others, who really, really don't want that Deng Xiaoping moment to happen in North Korea. They really don't want that to happen because they know the prediction was 78, 79, when China opened up, had its reform and opening up. What was supposed to happen in China was what happened in a lot of Eastern European countries. A lot of these Eastern European countries, they'd have a leader who'd say, hey, we're going to have market socialism now, we're going to have some privatizations. They would, take out a loan from Bank of America or whatever. They'd have some problems. Pretty soon you'd have a color revolution and capitalism would be restored. That happened all over the Eastern Bloc. Czechoslovakia, East Germany, all these places. Right? That was supposed to happen in China, according to American intelligence. And it didn't. In fact, it did the opposite. The Chinese Communist Party got stronger. Foreign investment, they brought in the foreign investment. They utilized it to strengthen their socialist planned economy, and now the Chinese Communist Party is stronger than it was in the 1970s and 60s. And then Vietnam did the same thing, right? Vietnam, again, USA predicted, okay, well, Vietnam will open up and, we'll bring some investment and then we'll be maneuvering in there. And pretty soon the Vietnamese will overthrow the Communist Party. It'll be like the Vietnam War never happened. No. In fact, at this point, the Vietnamese Communist Party is stronger. Why? They've utilized foreign investment, and now, we've got like the World Economic Forum talking about how there's a boom in Vietnam. So North Korea is getting ready to do what China and Vietnam have done. And the CIA is freaked out. Why? Because the Korean Workers' Party, the Vietnamese Communist Party, at one point, there's history there, and they align with the USA against China in different instances. They've got their foot in there. CIA's got their foot in Vietnam. There's entities in China that are sympathetic to the West and all of that. But North Korea is locked and loaded. Those folks are still technically at war with the United States. There was an armistice, but there was never a treaty to end the Korean War. Yeah, North Korea, you give North Korea a Deng Xiaoping moment, and that'll be an ideological boost to anti-imperialism and socialism and Marxism like you've never seen. They are very terrified of the ideological implications of making the Korean Workers' Party powerful and effective. They were afraid of seeing the Korean Workers' Party strengthen because the Korean Workers' Party is one of the most revolutionary, anti-imperialist, and hardline communist parties in the world. That's a fact, right? The Black Panthers. No one ever talks about this, but the Black Panthers of the United States had a very close relationship with North Korea. They were friendly to all socialist countries. Huey Newton visited China many times. Huey Newton went to Cuba. They were close to Cuba. But something about Juche and North Korea, you can look at this up. There's a lot written about it. The Black Panthers and North Korea, they were like this. They had a really good relationship, right? And North Korea, they were very tight with Gaddafi. They were tight with the Palestinians, and there's something there, right? There may be a faction, Vietnam. They don't like any socialism anywhere. But the North Koreans, the only country in the world that has ever taken a U.S. Army general prisoner. Think about that, right? The North Koreans took a U.S. Army general, not a private, not a sergeant, not some low-level officer. No. A U.S. Army general, they took him prisoner. They are the only country in the world that has ever captured a U.S. Army general. And CIA and the intelligence agencies are terrified of what will happen if they are able to pull off in North Korea what has been pulled off in Vietnam, what has been pulled off in China. They are scared of giving them their Deng Xiaoping moment in North Korea, right? They want to overthrow the North Korean government, and that's it. They do not want the Korean Workers' Party that is so strongly anti-imperialist, has a whole history of anti-imperialism. They don't want them to be powerful. They're afraid that it'll ultimately lead toward the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, right? That especially as South Korea moves out of U.S., hands. We saw the daughter of the dictator Park Chung-hee. We saw her thrown out of office. We now have Moon Jae-in in South Korea, much more sympathetic to China, much more open to negotiating. There's a very good chance, and we saw it. Everyone saw it. They try to tell you that everyone in South Korea hates the North. They want to kill all the North. We saw at the Olympics what happened. When the Olympic Games happened and the North Koreans came into a stadium in South Korea, there was massive applause. The Koreans cheered like crazy for their northern country folk. Right? And that bringing North Korea into the world economy could set the stage for some level of a unified government on the Korean Peninsula. Right? And think about it. There's a lot that the military-industrial complex would lose in such a situation. You know how much money we make, not we, but military corporations make selling weapons to South Korea? Do you know how much money is made by military corporations in the USA because we have thousands of troops stationed in South Korea? A lot to be lost. Not just in terms of ideology, with the Korean Workers' Party becoming stronger than ever with its radical, revolutionary, anti-imperialist history, but on top of that, right? In addition to all of that, what happens? The huge money-making opportunity called the never-ending Korean War, in which more money is thrown down the drain, and more weapons are sold to South Korea, more American GIs get stationed in South Korea, a huge military base gets set up there. All of that goes away. The U.S. troops in South Korea, if there's peace with the North, they're out of there. The huge stockpiles of weapons and, the terminal high-altitude defense system and all the huge, bunch of military equipment that we've been selling to South Korea, they ain't buying it no more. Think about it. There's a lot to lose if you got peace on the Korean Peninsula. There's a lot to gain for guys like Jim Rogers and maybe for Trump and for some people that would get in there and invest and get some of those minerals and get some of those deals and, hire some of those folks. And there's a lot to gain, sure. But there's also a lot to lose. A lot to lose for the military-industrial complex. Must be said. Must be said. I'm just telling you, just like war in the Middle East and the fact that every single, Middle Eastern oil autocracy, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all of them are stockpiling weapons. That's a big moneymaker for the military-industrial complex. South Korea, being locked and loaded to fight the North. If the Koreans are able to join hands and reunify peacefully, maybe do it in a federated way, let the North be the Korean Workers' Party and they came their legal system, at the South, do their legal system, some kind of federated alliance where they're not, lot to lose for a lot of very rich and powerful people in the United States. It must be said. I wanted to mention that, and that's what you need to know about the Korean Peninsula. I got a few other things I want to talk about before I go. Got a few other things we can talk about. Shout out to Lucas Marshall. Glad you're with us. Shout out to Joe Howard. Shout out to Jenny Lynn. Glad you're with us, as always. Shout out to Big G Haywood. Shout out to O Man Damp. I love you all. You are all my friends. It's so great to have you all here. We are having a great time. It's Saturday night. The sun is down. It's almost 10 o'clock here in my Brooklyn apartment. We're having a great time. I'm sitting in front of my bookshelf, and it's great. We're having a great time. But now is the time, if you haven't done it already, tweet this out, right? Cut and paste the link, put it on your Twitter, say, join the conversation, Caleb Maupin, ask whatever you want. Make it a bigger conversation. The more people hear, the better, right? If you're just joining us, if you've been with us for a while, now is the time to spread the word, make this a bigger conversation. I love you all. This is a great time. People keep asking me about modern monetary theory. I see you, drunken boat swan. I'm not ready to talk about that yet. I'll have an answer. Don't worry. Don't fear. The Inundation says he tweeted this already. Thank you. Folks, I'm going to get to the point in this live where I talk a little bit about, what is it? They say, when you're having a meeting, you have to talk about business. I guess I'm going to get down to business. I know we all want to talk about communism and North Korea and China and Trump and Iran and economics and trade deals, and I'm going to talk business here. Inundation is right. I'm going to talk about my new book. So, my book is finished. It's all done. Advance copies, I'll be picking up advance copies later this week from the printer and taking them as I go traveling. I've got some international travel planned. But it will be up for sale on the web July 5th. That is the day that my book will be available for order. And if you don't know much about my book yet, I know the rumors are going around the web and someone's been showing somebody the cover and it's all happening. If you don't know much about it, my new book is, a basic analysis of what's going on in the world today. If you're a Marxist, if you're an old school Marxist, the world doesn't make sense, right? The old left and right dichotomy doesn't make sense. Well, folks, this new book you will understand the world when you look at it. If you don't know the title yet, I'm not going to give it away. This new book, I've done a huge amount of research. I draw from all kinds of sources, and I lay out what is going on in the world today. And I got to tell you, some of the people who have seen preview copies of it have gotten very emotional about it. They have just said to me, wow, Caleb, wow. It's exciting. And I think you're all going to love the book, right? I will be I'll have the first copies in my hand hopefully on Tuesday. And it'll be up for sale, Amazon, Ingram, everywhere, book distributors, it'll be everywhere. And folks, this book it's not just about me, right? It's not an autobiography. It's not about Caleb. There's nothing about me in it. It's about politics. It's about economy. It's about historical progress. It's about who we are as a species. It's about who we are as Americans. And I feel like there is hope. There is really hope for this book to be part of something big. And that's why I need you. Because what we are doing here is something very, very, very special. All right? Folks, I went to see a concert by Aaron Copland. Aaron Copland's dead, but it was a concert of Aaron Copland music. It was last week. And, I found out that the Society for the Conservation of Classical Culture was having a performance of Aaron Copland's set, Old American Songs. And they were performing that in New York City at St. John's Church in Greenwich Village. So my wife and I, we went and heard just a beautiful performance of the music of Aaron Copland by Everett Suttle, who is he's a very well-known tenor, very well-known classical tenor. And, I listened to this music, and Aaron Copland was a communist. He was a communist. He was never a party member, I believe because he was gay. The Communist Party said that homosexuality was bourgeois decadence. They don't say that anymore, but that's what they said at the time. You weren't allowed to join if you were gay. Being gay was illegal, and communists weren't big on gays at that point. But he was a party fellow traveler. He signed every Communist Party petition. He campaigned for the Communist Party. He supported them. He was a Communist Party fellow traveler, sympathizer, Aaron Copland. I listened to Aaron Copland, and he, it's this set of music he put together in 1950, and it's all American songs, right? This is a great classical composer. And, he starts out his set, with the Boatman's Dance. It's a song about working class life, about these people who work on the Ohio River transporting goods and how they like to party on the weekends and celebrate, and spend their check in order to go and work away. He does another song called The Dodger. It's about corrupt politicians and corrupt preachers, and, he does Simple Gifts, right? The theme song of the Shakers, right? 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free. He ends the set. His set of American songs, old American songs, with Ching-a-ring Chaw, which is a religious song, but if you listen to it, it's almost like you can hear, it's supposed to be the words of a street preacher talking about heaven, but you listen to the lyrics, it's pretty clear, you can read into it, a call for a socialist society. Just beautiful stuff. Aaron Copland, right? Born in Brooklyn, but, both of his parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe. He's gay, he's a communist, but you listen to it, he composes this beautiful piece of music, And what he's doing, he could have picked any songs, but he selects them, he puts them in order to be humorous, to be, poignant at times. But what he's doing is he's highlighting socialism within the American spirit. He didn't write any of the lyrics to these songs, but he's highlighting socialism within the American soul, right? Whether it's the simple gifts, the Shakers, the communal pacifists who had their sect and held all things in common, whether it's, the class struggle of the people, and I mean, it's beautiful. It's very, very beautiful. And if you listen to Aaron Copland's music, right, all of it, NPR did a piece on Aaron Copland, and they talked about how ironic it was that Aaron Copland, a communist, right, someone who was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, right? How someone like that was considered, his music is the most quintessentially American music you've ever heard, right? His music is in every cowboy movie you ever saw. He has a piece called Rodeo, right? And there's part of it, and it's in every cowboy movie you ever saw. Right? He did the Billy the Kid suite. He did Appalachian Springs. He tried to make music that sounded super American. But all of it has this optimism that flows through it. Right? The USA, he knew it. Aaron Copland knew it more than anybody. He was anti-racist. He signed petitions against racism. He experienced discrimination and anti-Semitism. He protested. He marched in the streets. But he himself, Aaron Copland figured that the way to influence the United States was to find the goodness in the United States, find the socialistic sentiments that are already there and reinforce them. That's what he did. He, instead of trying to impose some kind of foreign ideology, and Aaron Copland did it. He went to Europe and he studied the avant-garde. He was always going to the Soviet Union and going to Europe and studying everything. But he composed American music that seemed like a cowboy movie, that seemed old American folk songs. He did all of this, but he found progressive, anti-racist, socialistic, populistic sentiments, optimism, hope, and progress within the American spirit. That was the beauty of Aaron Copland. Aaron Copland was a communist. He was at the Waldorf Peace Conference denouncing the USA, saying that the Cold War had to end, blaming the United States for the Cold War, saying the Soviet Union was right in the Cold War and the US government was wrong. But he composed American music. It's beautiful. Aaron Copland, it's something really beautiful. That's the kind of socialism that could win in the United States. Socialism with American characteristics. The United States is never going to adopt Mao Zedong thought as its ideology. The United States is never going to adopt the teachings of Stalin as its ideology. The USA will never become a Bolivarian country. The USA will never adopt Juche as its ideology. The USA will never adopt Ba'athist Arab socialism as its ideology. The only hope for socialism in the United States is socialism with American characteristics. And if you're not trying to figure out how the American people, if you're not trying to do what Aaron Copland did and find the socialism within the American soul, if you're not trying to do that, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time, right? That no country in the world has ever had socialism imposed on it from without. Every socialism that we've ever seen has been unique to the country and unique to its historical circumstances. Right? I mean, that's just a fact. And that being said, folks, after, this book will be out on July 5th. It's going to be great. You're all going to love it. But after that, I'm working on the mysterious book number 2. Book number 2. And book number 2, not an autobiography. Definitely not an autobiography. I'm not old enough to write an autobiography. And definitely not a polemic with any political group I used to associate with. But in book number 2, I am going to talk about me. The mysterious book number 2. The mysterious book number 2. Book number 2 is going to be an understanding of how I got to be where I am politically. I will explain my political development, and I will go over the political trends that dominate the United States. I will talk about neoconservatism. We'll talk about evangelical Christianity. I will talk about left anti-imperialism. I'll talk about Maoism. I'll talk about Trotskyism. It will be a history of political development. It will be a treatise on political thought in the United States and how my thought has evolved, what I learned from being in Iran, what I learned from being in Russia, what I learned from visiting the Bolivarian countries. It will be a book about ideas. It'll be about, yes, I have to say it, it'll be about how I've changed since I was a member of the Workers' World Party. And as much as I don't want it, the book will not be a polemic against the Workers' World Party, which I was a member of for many years and a spokesperson and all of that. I'm going to talk about them. This book 2, which is still being written, I've only written a little bit of it, and I'm writing it slowly because it's very careful. I have to write it very carefully. But, at one point I was marching through the streets. I was selling Workers' World newspaper. I've changed. Now, I haven't surrendered. I still believe in socialism with all my heart and soul. I'm still opposed to capitalism and imperialism. I still draw a lot from Marx and Lenin, but I've changed. And I need to explain how I've changed. So book 1, you're going to love. It'll be out on July 5th. It's all set. People have already given me glowing feedback about it. It's got a lot of power and punch behind it. But book 2 is also going to be special. I expect book 2 to be out in December, but that's a tentative date. But this is a 2-pronged project. I pitched it to the people that are helping me proofread and go over it and stuff as a 2-pronged project. All of my team are on board with proofreading, with editing, with all of that publication team. They're all on board for book 1 and book 2. They're a set. Book 1 that is about to come out, it's all done basically. Book 2 that will be out at some point shortly afterwards, a few months. It's a project. And I am going to need your help with it, folks, because what we're doing here is very special. What we're doing here is very, 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 very special. It's unique. As the young woman who I had coffee with told me, you don't sound like other communists in the United States. You're right. And I don't sound like other social democrats in the United States. I'm not sitting here with a microphone cursing, bleepity, bleepity, bleep. These bleeping corporations have too much bleeping power. It's bleeping unbelievable. I'm bleeping, military-industrial complex, bleeping. I'm not doing that. I'm not sitting here going, I hate America, and I'm mad, and I'm angsty, and this effing country is murdering millions of people, and I'm not an American. I'm not doing that either. I'm giving you Aaron Copland. I believe that there is a better world on the horizon. I believe in historical progress. Marxism is predicated on historical progress. Marxism is the reason to wake up in the morning. And I must say this because, and I got to wrap up soon, but, that sick Nexium cult, Keith Raniere and all of that shit was in the media. Did I just say a bad word? I'm sorry. That was in the media this week. And it makes you puke. It really makes you puke, right? I mean, what this guy was doing with these women and with his cults, and you think, I don't like Jordan Peterson. A lot of the, the self-help stuff that's on the internet is really, really gross, but this guy took it, oh my God. I'm not going to get too much into it, but oh goodness, this guy was, read this guy's record. Nasty, nasty man. But why was he able to get people to follow him? Why did Keith Raniere have a following? Well, the message of his sick cult was that he would make your life better. He would help you to be a better person. Because there's millions of young people in the United States right now who feel like they aren't good enough. And the problem with these socialist groups is they don't help young people feel better about themselves. Right? These socialist groups do the opposite. They play on your guilt. They're middle class, petty bourgeois, stoicist organizations. And their message is basically, you've had it too good because you live in America. And if you're, to be a real, humble, obedient person, you need to, be in our group. And you need to glorify our leaders. Young people join these groups, and these groups crush them. They crush their creativity. They suppress them, and they're like pyramid schemes. I hate to say it. It's pyramid schemes. It is the ego trip of some elderly baby boomers, And I'm talking about all of them, okay? The QWH and the XYZ, all the letters. This isn't about the group I was in. This is about all of them. A couple old, burned-out baby boomers who saw the Soviet Union fall and saw the movement decline. They want to feel good about themselves, and it's about them. And young people join it, and they have criticism, self-criticism, and they crush their egos. And young people join it, and they join for a year, or they join for 2 years, and they're out of there. And young people join socialist groups because they're attracted to socialism. Nobody ever joins these groups because they like the group. It's never that. They find socialism on their own, like I did, and they become a socialist, and then they pick one of the awful socialist groups, and which one is the least, ugh, and that's what they do. And these groups, instead of, socialism is about raising people up. It's about, marching toward a new world. These groups, they take young people in there and they browbeat them and they crush them and they tell them to drop out of college and they tell them to quit their jobs and just, just destroy yourself. You have it too good in life. You're too good. You shouldn't go any place. They crush people. It's sick. It's sick. And what we're doing here is the opposite. Young people are turning to people like Jordan Peterson. They're turning to people like, Stefan, I don't know what his name. They're turning to all these self-help gurus. Why? Because they already feel like they're not good enough. All these young people that are stuck in a cycle of low-wage, short-term service sector jobs. They got their parents saying, why don't you have a house and car and good-paying job like we did? All these young people, they want to be better. They want to be important. They want to make a contribution to the society they live in. Of course, they're not joining the QWH and the XYZ and the 4th League of the 12th Internationalist Workers' Party League Standpoint Revolution Workers' Society. They're not joining any of these groups because these groups don't do that. They don't make them better. They don't make young people more effective. They don't allow young people to unleash their creativity and brilliance. They crush them. And we're doing something different here. We're socialists. We believe in socialism. We draw from Marxism. We draw from Leninism. We draw from Bolivarianism. We draw from Baathism. We draw from all the different socialisms. But we love the people of the United States. We want to make life better in the United States. And we want you. I'm talking to you who's watching this. You. I want you to be the best socialist revolutionary that you can be. I want you to be successful in life. I want you to go out and achieve great things. I want you to be confident. I don't want you to be a quibbling, obedient person. The leader of my group told me to say this. I can only say what the leader of my group says. No. I want you to be bold. I want you to be strong. I want you to be full of confidence. I want you to lead the United States into a better tomorrow. That's what I want for you. And that's why the kind of socialism that we're talking about on these lives is so different than anything you will get from the alphabet soup of parties out there. They want to crush you. They want to destroy your confidence. They want to exploit you. I don't want that. I want you to walk with your head high, and I want you to save this country from the disaster created by greed. If you want to be a better person, you don't need Jordan Peterson. You don't need Keith Raniere. You don't need Ben Shapiro. You don't need any of these hustlers. What you need is to be part of a mission to save the United States from the disaster of greed. You need socialism with American characteristics. I don't hate you. I don't view you as a mooch. I don't view you as someone to con off of. I don't view you as somebody who needs to be shamed more, someone who's had it too good in life. I see you as full of potential. I see you as beautiful. And I say that it's too long. Just like our society is shooting itself in the foot by not looking at young people, every young person, and saying, you're an asset. You have the potential to make a beautiful contribution. Just like our society is doing it, the socialist movement's doing it too. I'm look, the socialist movement has shot itself in the foot by not empowering younger Americans, by not pushing historical optimism. And I am determined. I'm not a political activist. I'm pushing a unique brand of politics, a unique brand of philosophy. I'm doing that. I'm pushing a unique message here because my socialism and your socialism is you're part of this community, whether you like it or not, whether you're a lurker, a fan, or a hater, you're part of this. You're part of this now. I got to tell you, you're part of this. We are pushing a brand of socialism that is about making you better, about making you stronger, about making you confident, and about saving this country. And I think after Book 2 is released, at some point, after Book 2 comes out, I want to have a workshop in New York City. I want to meet some of you. I want those of you who are really on board, those of you who are on board with this project, who are with me every week. You sit here and you're commenting. I want to meet you in person. I want us all to meet each other. I want to know you. And I want you to know me. And I want us to be in the same room. And I want to have a workshop where we together learn how to make you stronger. I want you to be able to do lives like this. I want you to be able to write books about socialism. I want you to be able to go around and tell your coworkers and your classmates and your family members about socialism and change their opinion. I want you to be better. And that's my goal. After Book 2 is out, I'm hoping that in some part of the country, it can't be New York because we're all over the place and we want to do it somewhere more central. I want to have a workshop where I meet all of you in person. We meet, maybe we'll, rent a hotel, meeting room, one of those like conference rooms in a hotel, some city, or maybe we'll have it at at a restaurant someplace. But I want to start having meetups around the country where people like you join together, and together we start carrying out a mission to make ourselves better people, to become more successful in the world, and to save our country from the horrors of greed and profits. That's what's on my mind, folks. Book 1 will be out. I'll probably be traveling next week, so there won't be a live. You'll have to wait until I get back from my international travels. But Book 1 will be out soon. Book 2 is on its way. And I want to start building a movement about empowering young Americans to love themselves, to love their community, to feel confident, and to start pushing socialism, a socialism that can save America. And on that note, folks,